and I got to the top, and I'd lost a couple of seconds to the guys who were at the front. I kind of hoped that the guys behind would catch me again, so I would have some kind of, well, paces to ride with, like knowing what sort of power or effort they're riding at, what kind of speed. I can kind of gauge. The problem is when you go off on your own, you kind of resign to, well, riding your own pace and hoping that that's enough.
7 days, 800 kilometers and over 20,000 meters of climbing. The Haute Route Alps isn't just a ride, it's the ultimate test to the most legendary cols of the French Alps. From Megève all the way to the coast in Nice, every pedal stroke is earned and every summit is a battle. This is where we get to ride like pros, through a journey that transforms every rider who dares to take it on. This is my story.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to stage 3 of the Haute Route Alps. Over 130 kilometers and over 3,500 meters of elevation gain. We're doing the Col du Galibier, the Col du Telegraphe, and the Col du Galibier today. I didn't sleep that well last night, actually, even though where we're staying is pretty incredible. But we're staying in Tignes, which is 2,000 meters above sea level, and I was told that sleeping at elevation is difficult. And last night I woke up multiple times. I was really thirsty. I'm sure this coffee's not helping, but it is waking me up. Yeah, we're in this wonderful apartment, Cap Niège. I slept in this little bunk bedroom last night, in the kids' room. Very swanky, very nice. We had breakfast delivered to us as well, because it's just like a self-catering apartment. So morale is high in terms of our living standards. But we're moving to a different area today, near Briançon, and we might even see the Welter.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
That is pretty special.
So this stage on paper looked fairly straightforward. 15-kilometer climb to the top of the Iseron to begin with, a long valley in the middle, then the Telegraphe, and then finish on top of the Col du Galibier. Simple, right? Well, not quite, because the Iseron is super high. The highest paved pass in the Alps. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but the Bonnet is actually higher. Yes, it is, but it's technically not labelled as a pass. Yep, there's technicalities to these things. But the Galibier would prove to be a thorn in my side, because when I did the Marmotte a couple of years ago, it's where I came unstuck. Mainly because I went too hard on the Telegraphe just before it. Because for those of you that don't know, you have literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes between the two of those big climbs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Iseron, what a place. It was, up to that point, the best climb of the week for me. The views, the blue skies, the cold, crisp morning mountain air. It was just a wonderful place to be at that time of day. And at one point I looked down from one of the first couple of hairpins and I could see, the 450 other riders out on the course, just strung out all over the lower slopes. But I had to focus because the first couple of minutes of this climb were pretty hard. Leo, who is the leader of the 3-day event, and given this is the 3rd day, this was the final stage, so I think he was going to race aggressively. And Fabio, the leader of the 7-day event, were both pushing the pace. And that immediately shredded the group to just 5 or 6 of us. Now, going up this climb, I had to keep reminding myself that we are at high elevation already. We start this climb, the last 15 kilometers, at 2,000 meters above sea level. And over the next 15 kilometers, we're going to reach 2,800 meters. Oh, and also the leader of the 7-day, both male and female, get to wear the leader's orange jersey. Now, thankfully, the pace settled down and we had a bit of a lull for a couple of kilometers in the middle part of this climb. But that wasn't enough for Fabio, obviously, because he decided to throw in a stinging acceleration. It lasted, I would say, at least 45 seconds, And I didn't even try to respond to it because at that point I was already breathing through a straw. Leo, on the other hand, was a little bit late to follow, but eventually did accelerate and get across to Fabio, only to then soon get dropped not long after. So I decided to run my own pace. Eventually, I actually got back to Leo, and the guys that were with our group behind, they were holding the gap pretty stable as well. Now, the whole climb itself took us 46 minutes, but from the acceleration, with 6 kilometers to go, that last 20 minutes, we were climbing at 1300 VAM. Sea level power being around 320 watts, but my actual power being about 280 watts. My heart rate, I could already feel, was being pegged. So the first time section of the day was this climb. So I'd lost more time to the race leader, Fabio. Getting to the top though, where the timing stopped, I didn't want to hang around. I wanted to get down off this mountain as quick as possible to get into the warmth of the valley and the sunlight. So that's what I did. And boy, what a lovely descent that was. So we get to the bottom of the Iseron. And at this point, we have a 70 kilometer time section ahead of us, with the last 10 kilometers of that being up the Col du Telegraphe. Then it would be neutralized again for about 5 kilometers before we hit the bottom of the Galibier, and that would be timed from the bottom to the top. The feed station was going to be at the top of the Telegraphe. Now, when I stopped at the bottom of the Iseron, I actually met a nice gentleman who offered to refill my bottles for me because I only carried one bottle, or one full bottle at the Iseron to save a bit of weight. So I did really need some more liquid. And so this nice gentleman allowed me to fill up my bottles. Now, at the time, there was only a couple riders there with us, or with me rather. And so we waited for a larger group to come along, and so that, well, essentially we could just have an easier ride down through that valley. So that's what happened. Quite a large group decided to form. It took a while though, and we ended up gaining, 15 riders, 20 riders, but boy, it was quick. It was really fast down through that valley. And at the time, we were riding in this group, and it wasn't an easy ride, I've got to be honest. There was a lot of surging. There was a lot of people who are much faster on descents than other people, so the group kept splitting, and there was lots of stuff happening. So it wasn't just as simple as like getting in a group and having an easy ride to the bottom of the Telegraphe. I did know though, however, that getting to the Telegraphe, it was essentially just going to be another free-for-all time trial up there. So once we did get there, that's what happened. Everyone put their foot down and everyone ended up riding at their own speed. But this whole section of valley leading up to the Telegraphe, we averaged 44 kilometers an hour and 175 watts normalized, which is obviously relatively low. But the leaders who had pressed on, they had actually made time on us on that valley section. So I think there was just 2 of them, and yet they still went faster than a group of 20 through that valley. So chapeau, they were absolutely flying. And it just goes to show that cooperation and a broken group sometimes, which is what happened to ours for moments, can sometimes go faster than a larger group. So anyway, the Telegraphe went well. Got to the top, and I felt like I'd put a good effort in. But in reality, I felt flat. 290 watts normalized power for 38 minutes with 1300 VAM.
Oh well, that was a very long valley. We finally made it to the top of the Telegraphe. I'm not in a good way. I mean, I've not slept well the last 4 nights. I think that's having a big impact on how I feel. Plus we slept at altitude last night. I can't really put my finger on it, but my body doesn't feel like it's responding very well to what I'm trying to do. And it's getting me a bit low, to be honest. I'm just trying my best. I'm trying to push as hard as I can, but my heart rate's not giving, and the sensations are not good either. So I'm trying to find the positives
I mean, the positive might be that I get to the Galibier in good shape. As in, like, I don't drop off a cliff. If I do, that'll be a big positive, but we'll just have to see how it goes. At the minute, I'm just trying to deal with it.
Now the last part of this video is a little bit anticlimactic because my camera actually ran out of battery. Now I put this down to the fact that earlier on in this stage I wasn't actually keeping an eye on when I was recording, and I ended up recording a massive chunk of the Iseron, which I didn't really want to, and I didn't realise until I probably recorded about 20 or 30 minutes. So that drained the battery big time. And then I had full intentions when I hit the Galibier of getting my phone out and doing some filming and some lovely stuff like that. And of course that didn't happen because I was chewing the handlebars basically the whole way up. I'm looking at it now, and although I paced it really well because I started off quite steady, I knew how long this climb was. It took me 50 minutes from the start of the time section to the end, and I averaged 254 watts, which is good enough for 1230 VAM. Now, at sea level, it's going to be around 280 watts maybe, but that's not a personal best performance by any means. And I can see now why I felt so poor on the Telegraphe. It just goes to show in the Galibier, I didn't really have anything left. But I was better than I was at the Marmot, where I think I was doing about 180 watts. So it was a big win for me, big personal win, that I was able to still ride at the high 200 watt range for the Galibier. And I was pretty happy with that. But it was a case of just everyone just settled into their rhythm and just ticked off the kilometers on the Galibier. It's like a treadmill, that climb. I now love it more so than when I did it at the Marmot, where I said I don't think I ever want to do the Galibier again. A bad experience can do that for you, but after doing it now and getting it kind of okay, I feel a little bit better about it. But the real highlight of the day was descending off the top of the Galibier and stopping at the Lottery junction. I don't know if you know that, like there's a junction a couple of kilometers down, and actually the race that was coming through on that day, within 10 minutes of me getting over the top of the Galibier, was the Vuelta a España. I've never seen that race before, never seen the Vuelta a España, and ironically I've seen it in France as they were coming over from Italy.
Jesus. It's nuts, isn't it?
And it worked out kind of well because once the race passed, obviously the road gets a little bit busy with people walking on it and things like that, but we had a police escort down towards Briançon for the next 15 kilometers. It was a beautiful descent because it's not too steep and it's pretty straight. It's just flowing all the way down until we got to our official finish line. The real finish was actually at the top of the Galibier. That's where the last time section. But the real finish, where the event village is, where they set up at the end, was a little bit further down. And that's where we had to go. But all in all, a decent day. Now, I did lose time on the general classification. At the start of the day, I was 5 minutes and 43 seconds down. And by the end of the day, I was 13 minutes and 6 seconds down. And now this day actually was the day I lost the most time. I put that down to the Iseron, being the high elevation that it was, and that generally in this first few days, I wasn't feeling good on the first climbs. It took me a while to get going, and that's where I put down, like, where I lost a chunk of time. Maybe a minute, probably more like 2 minutes in the Iseron on the last couple of kilometers, where I was really struggling and at the elevation. But then through the valley, we lost a couple of minutes, and then obviously the Telegraphe, I lost another couple of minutes there, 1 or 2 minutes. It all adds up, and I think the biggest chunk of time then was obviously on the Galibier. At the end of the day, I had a fairly decent ride. It wasn't my best day, but possibly one of the more enjoyable days. That's it for stage 3. Now on to stage 4. and the Col du Izoard.